Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, as you can tell by the title, we will be talking about a very large winter storm, potentially a blizzard, actually most likely a blizzard, that will be occurring across a good portion of the central and eastern United States. Now, this thing will be bringing many impacts, unfortunately, and as we're heading into potentially the busiest travel week of the year, I want to give you guys an update on this potential massive beast. As you can see right there from the GFS picture, this thing is massive. It could be really even bigger than the system that we've seen before, not only from its snowfall, but also from its impacts, as it's going to be hitting larger metros and obviously occurring at a more busier time frame. So yes, this is an extraordinary storm, potentially one that could go down into the history books for many cities across the Midwest. I know this sounds aggressive, but we are getting to that time frame where this is around 100 hours out, so it's really not in La La Land. This is something that's becoming quickly a reality, so I want to give you guys an update on this. Thankfully, after this system, the pattern looks a bit quiet, so we get a little bit of a break from these massive beasts. But for the meantime, we have this guy to deal with. So let me start off now by talking about the Northwestern United States. Obviously, I want to make sure if you guys are new to this channel, you can use the little scroll bar at the bottom or in the description box below. Click on the blue numbers right next to your region so you can skip to your region to see how this system will impact you. Not all regions will be impacted the same, and unless you want to watch a 30-minute video, well then go ahead, but again, skip to your region as it will probably be long enough, and that's what you really want to know. Okay, let's start talking about this giant beast. The first region I want to start addressing is the Northwestern United States. So the Northwestern United States is going to be one region that is thankfully not going to be impacted as significantly as other regions. Now you may be wondering, why am I saying thankfully, and why is that a good thing? Well, obviously there's going to be less impacts for the airports that are here, so at least not the whole entire United States will be equally impacted by this, but also it gives me a little bit more leniency because, well, I just don't have to talk about this region as much as I do for the other regions. Notice we do have a little bit of snow occurring right now across the northwestern United States, across southwestern Canada, Washington, Idaho, Montana. Again, this snow is occurring pretty lightly, and you can see that as I push this into tomorrow, Monday, it really kind of runs out of steam and doesn't do much. However, this system, the big beast, is gonna have humble beginnings, and this isn't it. But this one right here, moving in on Tuesday and Wednesday, it's going to be very cold across the Northwest, so cities like Vancouver, Seattle, you may pick up even some snow because of how cold it will be. It won't be a terrible amount of snow, but obviously given that it's snow, not a lot of it needs to be falling in order for it to cause travel impacts. And notice across Idaho, Montana, that snow continues. Again, this may not look like a beast that it's going to become, and quite frankly, it isn't at this stage. You could see that, again, this moves in towards the Northwest by late Tuesday and into early Wednesday morning. All right, so that is the timing that you guys mainly are going to be seeing that snow throughout the day on Wednesday. This leaves Washington, enters Oregon, leaves extreme northern Idaho by late in the evening Wednesday, and into Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado by the time it's late Wednesday and into early Thursday. And notice that thing moves out of there. I do want to warn you guys that live across the Northwest that while this system may not be too incredibly impactful, this system itself, you can see, I'll click on the snowfall accumulations, or sorry, the rainfall accumulations. You can see mainly where there really won't be that much rain falling. Where it's going to be precipitating, it's going to be falling mainly in the form of snow because of how cold it is. Some areas will see a decent bit, like the Cascades, maybe in Seattle itself, picking up a few inches right there. That's definitely something I want to note. That could be obviously something pretty incredible. Another thing I want to say is that your guys' pattern is going to be unique. It's not going to stop after this massive beast. Well, I guess it's not going to be the massive beast again while it's still across the Northwest, but notice that we have more activity. So by the time Friday the 23rd, while the rest of the United States is dealing with this monster, we have another system coming in. Now it's not massive, but it's bringing in more precip, and then you can see another one. Classic La Nina fashion, it's going to be warmer these next systems, so you can see areas that could see snow across the next few hours with this system, sorry, next few days with the first one, are really going to be seeing rain out of this second and third one. And then do note that into the long range through the 26th, 27th, it's storm after storm. You can see some of them are going to be pretty big. The confidence is still a little bit low on these, but it does look like an active pattern will ensue, producing a lot of precipitation. And just to show you that if I click through the 230-hour time frame, the temperatures are going to be warmer than they are today, potentially even running quite a bit above average, and also the total accumulated precipitation will be pretty significant across some of these areas, ranging in the in the scope of 3 to 5 inches of precip across the mountainous areas. A lot of these areas are dry, especially across Northern California, so that is probably most likely welcome for you. I won't be showing you the European because the agreeance is pretty profound, and the GFS gives you good enough of a scenario. Again, for precise details about your area, go to your local National Weather Service office by typing in weather.gov and searching that up. Let's start talking about the Southwestern United States now, and switching our gears to, well, talking about what you guys may be seeing from this system. Again, as I was saying, for the folks that live across the Northwest, your guys' region, thankfully, for me at least as a forecaster, is not going to be that busy. And I say thankfully because it gives me another area of the country where I don't have to spend too much time on, because, well, the system's going to really just kind of graze your area. The bigger news story will be the cold air that follows it, at least for a good part of this area. Notice that by Wednesday, late Tuesday, early Wednesday, we do have this little little disturbance that you probably can't even really see it that well from this perspective, but it's right towards the north across Washington and Idaho. We have a little bit of rain, a little bit of snow moving in again through the day on Wednesday, into the day on Thursday. This moves through Wyoming into Colorado. You can see cities like Denver, Boulder, the mountainous areas west of Colorado, or west of Denver, will be picking up a little bit of snow, obviously, but it's still really nothing too incredible. And notice that by Friday, this thing's out of here. The peak snowfall coverage for this region will be probably late Wednesday and into early Thursday. You can see when it looks like that, but it moves out of there pretty quickly. In terms of total snowfall, some areas, especially the mountains, could pick up definitely a few inches, maybe even a few feet, especially across the Grand Tetons. But I don't really see amounts going far above, say, 12 to 18 inches. So a few feet. That might have been a little bit dramatic there. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, the biggest news story for you guys is going to be the 2-meter temperature anomalies, and that is obviously in the form of cold. So notice, and look at these contrasts here, which is kind of also incredible. After that storm passes through on Thursday, you're left with very cold air across Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico. Look, half of New Mexico, the eastern half, is straddled with extremely cold air, way below normal, while the other half is actually warmer. So again, kind of interesting how some of these mountains really block some of that cold air from spilling further south. And notice that in the future, as we get towards Christmas Day itself on Sunday and past, we get a pretty profound warm-up. And in terms of the total accumulated, in terms of the temperature shaded, you can see that the first wave of cold air is pretty prevalent. Look at Wyoming. Those are some incredibly cold temperatures. And as you look further off into the forecast, you can see those start letting up, and we start seeing above average temperatures, including, days that are above freezing compared to, what those few days will be across Wyoming when that barbaric cold will be centered there. Again, California, southern Nevada, Arizona, western New Mexico, you kind of escape the worst of this, including also, I guess, Oregon. Okay, let's move on now to a different region of the United States. This is where things start getting really chaotic, and I'll have to spend a lot of time on because of the uncertainty and, I guess, the impacts that this storm can and most likely will bring at this point. First thing I want to address, there's going to be a little disturbance into today, late Monday and into Tuesday. This could bring a little snow into Kansas City, say Iowa, Des Moines, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Don't be surprised if you're seeing some snow falling on late Monday into early Tuesday. That's not the big system. That's just a little precursor. That gets out of here pretty quickly. What you will start seeing is, again, cold air. There won't be a warm up out ahead of this, and even if there is one, it's going to be, a warm up. It's going to be it's going to be crapshoot, really, quite frankly. You could see temperatures maybe warming up across the northern areas from 10 degrees Fahrenheit to 15 or 20, right? So still very cold. And do note that by late Tuesday into even early Wednesday, as early as early Wednesday, we could start seeing some snow spreading into South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa. Again, this snow will have no problem accumulating. It will be very cold. Let me show you some of these temperatures that it will be falling in. Quite frankly, negative. So that's another thing to keep in mind. As this thing starts developing, you can see some precipitation rates pick up. And again, given how cold this snow will be falling in, the temperatures, how cold they will be, and how some of these precipitation rates are going to be pretty impressive. We may be looking at some very significant accumulations even from an event that typically wouldn't be as significant, because, as you all know, the snowfall ratio, the 10 to 1, assumes, a liquid, so it assumes around 30 degrees Fahrenheit when the snow is falling, but because this is falling in temperatures that are closer towards 10, 15 degrees, maybe even some that are negative Fahrenheit, this snow will be very, very fluffy. So typically an inch of precipitation of water would accumulate to 10 inches of snow. In such environments, an inch of precipitation or water would equivalent to potentially 30, 40 inches of snow. So that's why it makes the system more dramatic. Now, I don't think there will be 30, 40 inches here, but with such rates and such cold temperatures, we could definitely see amounts that are exaggerated towards a foot, if not even more. Notice that by Thursday during the day, right, so 2 days before travel, and by the way, or before Thanksgiving, and or before Christmas, and by the way, the two busiest travel days of the Christmas time frame are the days before, 22nd and the 23rd and the 24th. So do note that this thing really explodes. Again, I also want to add, there's so many moving parts here, so I do forgive if I am a little bit throwing around my words here. There's difference between the models. The GFS and European are still in general disagreement. I would say, again, as I said yesterday, I am leaning towards the European model because of the fact that it has been more consistent. I said that yesterday, and today, looking at the new model data, it's probably a good thing that I did stick with the European, because the GFS has a very similar track to the European, so it has definitely trended towards the European model. Except there's still differences because there's so many moving pieces in this. Notice that according to the GFS, the snow is brought into Kansas, Missouri, into Oklahoma. So obviously still snowing across Iowa, not as heavy snow. Notice northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, into Michigan. Your guys going to pick up a little bit of snow, but it's not going to be extremely heavy. It's going to be light, but it's not going to have a problem accumulating, so it's still going to cause some travel issues. Notice this thing out ahead of this cold air and a very strong jet stream is going to have no problems intensifying. But look at this. So if you recall, across the northeastern United States, sometimes we have a phenomenon called bombing out of a low pressure, where a millibar is dropped every single hour for 24 hours. This could actually happen across the Midwest this time. It has happened sometimes, but it's a lot more of a rare thing. But look, it goes from around 997 millibars right at around Friday, 12 a.m. And by the next 12 a.m. period, this thing is 961. So that's well over the criteria that it needs to meet from bombing out. And look at some of these snowfall rates that it brings across Indiana, Michigan, Illinois. Again, the track is still a little bit uncertain, but one thing that is certain is that this thing will be a wind machine with an extremely strong high pressure coming in from Canada and a very strong low pressure. These winds could be approaching 40, 50 miles per hour, if not, 60. In some areas, maybe even 70. I know it sounds exaggerated, but that's the truth. This thing could be a absolutely legendary winter storm for some of these areas here. Chicago, one of the cities, Indianapolis, Detroit, depending again on the track. Obviously, I don't think all those cities will be seeing, a legendary storm. I'm just giving the possible cities at this point. St. Louis, Kansas City, Milwaukee, maybe even Green Bay if it moves further north and west. And we're talking about amounts that are, potentially top 5 biggest storms here. Notice the total snowfall, obviously, according to the GFS, this is assuming a 10-to-1 ratio. And I know I may sound extremely overhyped here, but assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, some of the snow across, say, Chicago, look at that 21-inch amount there, right? Or across Michigan, 20 inches. It's not going to be falling at a 10-to-1 ratio. And for that, I'll show you a different website that addresses that snowfall ratio issue. Because of how cold air, how cold the air will be when this snow is falling, we could be looking at temperatures that are maybe 10, 15 degrees when this stuff is occurring, as opposed to the 30, which means you could double almost some of those snowfall amounts to the appropriate ratio. So in terms of the liquid that falls is going to be the same, but it's the fluffiness of it, right? Sometimes when you see literally slush falling out of the sky, it's not going to accumulate as nicely as fluffy snow. That's the whole difference here. So sometimes, if it's really cold, you get that. I mean, it's almost like you could leaf blow that stuff away. I don't think it'll be quite that, but it will be way heavier than a 10-to-1, or way higher than a 10-to-1 ratio. And look, according to this weather model website, a GFS model, right? So the one we were looking at, this is what it shows in terms of snowfall when it addresses that correct ratio, the Kuchera temperature profile. These sometimes aren't too accurate, but it's definitely more accurate in this situation than a 10-to-1. And look, I mean, we have areas that across Indiana that are potentially showing 30, even 40 inches of snow. Again, that is a bit ridiculous at this point, but it's a possibility. Notice Nebraska, Iowa, easily 6 to 12 inches because of how cold it will be and how much precipitation relatively will fall for how cold it is. Yeah, we could be looking at potentially a very, very historic system, to say the least, right? So again, this will be occurring into Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It's going to start Wednesday across Nebraska, Kansas, Thursday into Illinois, Michigan, and then Friday across the Great Lakes as it pushes into Canada into Saturday and Sunday. If you were to take a look at the European model, so I want to show you the Euro. Again, there are differences, as I mentioned, between the models here, so it's not as easy as just looking at one model, but the difference of the models, and then obviously, you know, which one is more accurate and whatnot. I favored the European, and it seems as if that was a good call. Notice that the most latest European model run shows the snow a bit further towards the north, similar timing, a bit of a different orientation. It doesn't show the snow as far south into Oklahoma, say, but it does eventually explode the system. 978, 972 millibars, very heavy snow, slightly different than what the GFS shows, but a lot of areas across these areas. Let me go back to this website to address that snowfall ratio issue because of how cold it will be. Again, that 10-to-1 ratio is just simply not accurate in this scenario. Again, assuming the European comes accurate, we still have legendary amounts across many areas, slightly different though. Notice less across Nebraska, Kansas, and more across the Great Lakes into southern Canada. Again, yesterday I was favoring the European heavily because I was realizing the GFS was adjusting to it. At this point, I still favor the European model, but not as significantly as I did yesterday because, well, the adjustments have been made by the models, the GFS, so now, you know, the GFS could pick up on a few things that the European isn't. So, again, for the North Central United States, please stay tuned to your local National Weather Service, especially with such a busy travel week. This thing could be nothing short of absolutely historic for these areas. Again, assuming we see 20 inches plus, I mean, obviously there's still a lot of details that still need to be resolved here, but looking at my area, we are around 100 hours away from this occurring. You know, I have a lot of viewers from Chicago and southern Wisconsin. You know, if 21 inches were to occur, which this model shows more of, even if the 21, you know, conservative amount would occur, then that would be a top 3, I think, blizzard. And this would be a blizzard. There's no way it wouldn't be with the winds that it's producing. So, yeah, definitely something that, well, yeah, we haven't seen in at least a few years. So that's just the scope of this thing, and I'm kind of struggling to word this into because I'm just still kind of baffled that this is actually a possibility and not, you know, 200 hours out. Moving on, though, we have to move on to different regions. Obviously, the North Central United States is going to be one that is very concerning, but we have other areas across the country that are going to be also very heavily impacted by this. Let's go to the South Central United States. So again, let's start off by showing you just the GFS model. I'll show you the European because there's still some differences. As of yesterday, the GFS has made some differences or made some adjustments that trended towards what the European was favoring, which is why I think the European is more of a feasible, I guess, outcome here. Notice the first news story will be on Monday. There will be a little bit of snow across Missouri, Kansas, but notice across Texas, Louisiana, there's going to be more heavy rainfall across Mississippi, Alabama. That will move away, though, by Tuesday. So a little bit of peace into Wednesday. And then according to the GFS, again, this is an official forecast. We see snow moving in on Thursday into Kansas, into Oklahoma. It will be very cold. So this snow will have no problem accumulating. It will actually be probably pretty fluffy. It will be wetter than the snow further up north, but the 10-to-1 snowfall ratio will still not be adequate, and it will probably be falling at more of a 15-to-1 snowfall ratio. And I'll tell you why that is important in just a bit, as I was explaining to the other folks that were watching the other region across the North Central United States. Unless you're watching this whole video, then you're already hearing me repeat the same things several times over. Notice that the GFS by late Thursday into Friday shows many areas across Missouri, southern Illinois that started off as rain converting into snow. This is going to be obviously very heavy snowfall rates. And again, the GFS brings that snow into Arkansas, maybe even to northeastern Texas. I would say that's pretty unlikely. It's going to go as far south as, say, Dallas. But Tennessee, Kentucky, Mississippi, northern Alabama, the possibility is there. And again, looking at the total snowfall, assuming a 10-to-1 ratio, you could see that it brings that snow pretty far down to the south, you know, giving even cities like Oklahoma City, Little Rock, Arkansas, potentially White Christmas. Again, I want to look at this model. This website gives us an accurate estimation of the snowfall, given how cold the temperatures will be that the snow is falling in. So it will be fluffier in nature. You can see it's a Kuchera temp profile, and you can see that we have some even decent snowfall accumulations into northern Oklahoma and whatnot, with that snow stretching maybe into southern Oklahoma. That is a GFS model. Now let me show you the European. The European is slightly different, and probably, again, depending on whether or not you like this, it's probably the more realistic one. And I mean, not depending on whether you like this or not. You know, some areas want the snow, and you'd want the GFS, which is a more southern scenario. European most likely is going to be slightly more accurate, though again, at this point, it's a lot less of a difference than, say, it was yesterday when the GFS was showing that storm way further across the northeast. Notice Missouri, Arkansas, Illinois, you pick up that snow, but again, across Texas and, say, Louisiana, you guys mainly get a little bit of rain, not even that much precip, and just cold air behind this thing. Again, both models show a massive beast. But the difference is that, you know, if the GFS showed several inches across Oklahoma, Arkansas, the European doesn't do that, really. Again, these ratios aren't adequate. It's a 10-to-1 ratio, so let me go on this website and show you the Kuchera. I did that with the GFS. Let me now do that with the European for you guys. So you can see, you know, Kansas, Missouri, you guys could still pick up a lot of snow from this event, even from a more northern scenario like the European. But Oklahoma, you get a lot less. Arkansas gets a lot less, and then Texas, Louisiana, you guys get pretty much nothing. Same with Mississippi and Alabama, maybe a few snow showers and flurries with that. Obviously, you will be getting a little bit of rain. So those are the differences for now. Again, this is still a little bit away, to say the least, so we were gonna, you know, there's gonna be some differences that are gonna be drawn out here. Let's move on to the northeastern United States and start showing you what could happen here. This is another area that is chaotic, right? A few days ago, the models were still showing a coastal storm, and if you're watching this video from the northeast and you're still having that question, can this turn into a coastal storm? At this point, I would say the chances of that happening are less than 10%. Yes, it's a pretty drastic downturn, say, from even yesterday, when the chances of that were closer to 20, maybe 25%. Doesn't mean some of these areas won't see snow. As you can see, the next few days you will be seeing some lake effect as that cold air rides over the lakes. But with that, you know, coming in that new strong storm system, that southerly wind flow, it's going to take away that lake effect snow and start driving in some warmer air. That's going to lead to at least a thud of snow initially from this system. Again, according to the GFS, I say according to the GFS because there's still a lot of model disagreements here, we see an area of precip moving to central Pennsylvania and into southern, northern Virginia, into southern New York, with a lot of snow, followed by mainly rain. And that's probably going to be the extent for what these areas see in terms of snow. Notice cities like Detroit, into Michigan, into southeastern Canada, across northern United States. You guys are going to be straddling a lot of that rain-snow line. Again, this could still be shifting a little bit north, to the south, to the east. Mainly rain, though, I would say, for the majority of southeastern Canada and the northeastern United States. But because of how unique this system is and how fierce and sharp that cold air will be coming behind this, you guys could still get some snow across Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia from the wraparound of this. The cold air, get this, it will be moving in so quickly, it will be pretty much chasing the heck out of this precipitation, converting, as you could see, a lot of that initial rain, right, into potentially snow. And again, models are historically pretty bad at predicting these type of events, but even if this were to occur, Pennsylvania, upstate New York, maybe even New York City picking up some snow, and then the wraparound from this will produce additional snow across the northern kind of areas here. Southeastern Canada, Toronto, you will get in on some snow according to a scenario like this. And again, this is just the GFS model. But even if a model like this were to occur, there are some differences, obviously. I will use a 10-to-1 ratio for this because a lot of the snow that will be falling here will be a little bit wetter. So I feel like this is maybe a little bit more appropriate. But you could see that there could still be areas here across the Northeast that pick up 3, 4, 5 inches. So don't completely lose your hope across the white crystals across Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, upstate New York. Coastal areas, unfortunately, it seems like you guys won't be getting one this year. And then across the St. Lawrence River Valley, all these cities lined up here, Montreal, Quebec, Toronto, Ottawa, you guys could see some wraparound snow behind that according to a model like the GFS. Unfortunately, that's not the only model that we have, and in fact, I believe the European has a slightly better handling of this. Just to save time, I will show you the European snowfall accumulations without showing you the playing of the model. Again, all models show a big beast. It's just that you could see the European shows a bit less across Pennsylvania, more across Ohio, more across southeastern Canada, a bit less across certain areas. So again, the Northeast is a very tricky region. There are some differences, but again, the European and GFS do relatively agree that this won't be a massive event for you, but there still will be some snow, and some snow will still be a lot in the case of this system. I can show you the European Kuchera amounts, assuming a more accurate ratio. And again, you can see that the amounts that are adjusted here are a bit higher. You can see across even northern Indiana, right into Ohio, we have quite some more significant snowfall accumulations, assuming that we have a little more cold air moving in. And despite these areas seeing rain at first, you could still pick up a lot of snow, turning this into White Christmas. Again, the Northeast is a bit chaotic. I'll be going more into detail on this on the next coming videos, obviously, as we get closer and closer to this system. I do want to address that again. The intensity of this thing will be just beyond your potentially words. So I mean, 961 millibars, very strong winds. So obviously this would be extremely wind driven. This is on Christmas Eve. This would be crippling travel regardless. Even if it's raining in Boston, the impacts further in other airports are gonna slow things down, and this thing's gonna be affecting many large cities: Chicago, Detroit, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Columbus. And again, the exact impacts are still yet to be determined, but because of how odd this thing is, we're going to have to wait and see. For now, again, the favorite areas for the Northeast snow are kind of the northern half away from the coastal areas. Moving on now towards the final region is the southeastern United States. This is an area where really the snow could still get in here, but it won't be as widespread as in other areas. So let's start off by looking at the GFS. Next few days, pretty calm. However, late Monday into Tuesday, we do see a little bit of rain. Not the main storm we're talking about, but notice if you live across Florida and you're watching this southeastern Florida, really the tip of the peninsula here, will be potentially dealing with some heavy rain and maybe even some severe weather on Tuesday and Wednesday. That moves out of here, and you can see that we start seeing precipitation float up towards the north ahead of the system. And look, so if you live across, again, Arkansas, southeastern Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, you're going to start off with mainly rain and then convert to some snow according to the GFS model. Again, there's still some differences here. There will be rain pretty much regardless of which model you look at across the southeast, but this is where things get interesting, right? The GFS shows the snow getting a lot more further south than what the European does, and at this point, it's a fair possibility. I would say I'm leaning towards the European scenario, which I'll show you in just a second. But if the GFS comes true, Tennessee, Alabama, Mississippi, most of Kentucky, portions of North Carolina, maybe extreme northern Georgia, lots of Virginia, North Carolina, getting in on the backside of the snow and still picking up some snowfall. And obviously behind this, there will be some barbaric cold air moving in, even for the areas like the southeast. So total rainfall or precip, rain and snow, you can see is pretty significant, especially combined with that event that could be occurring on Tuesday across Florida and into Wednesday. Total snowfall, though, you can see still definitely there. So Tennessee could pick up a few inches, Kentucky, Arkansas, maybe extreme northern Mississippi, Alabama, these areas. It's a possibility. However, I don't want to ruin this for you guys, because if you take a look at a model like the European, which is a different scenario, you can see that its snowfall footprint for the southeast is a bit less. Tennessee picking up a little bit less. Kentucky still mainly getting in on that. Virginia, pretty much nothing at all. North Carolina, nothing. The Georgia, the Carolinas, Alabama, and Mississippi really also not picking up that much. Which scenario is going to be more accurate, European or GFS? I'm leaning towards the European. That's just my opinion, though, and again, for details, you will have to stay tuned. Further south and east, I would not say you'd have a bigger chance. You don't have a big chance of seeing a White Christmas, mainly a rain event, and a slight severe weather event as well. So that is that, and let me now give you guys a brief overview, because I want to start talking, or I want to kind of also address just the barbaric, I mean, truly barbaric cold air that will be moving in behind the system. For regardless how many people get impacted with the snow, rain, it's going to be affecting even areas as far as Florida, with some dangerously cold weather. Obviously, the next few days we'll see that consolidate across the Northwest, which is why cities like Vancouver and Seattle could be seeing snow with the beginning of this monster. Still a little disturbance while it's across the Northwest. But notice, as this system moves off, you can see quickly seeing right there's that warm front, there's that cold front. So, place like Texas, the Panhandle may be well below freezing in terms of Fahrenheit, and then, or in terms of the zero, so negative Fahrenheit, while further south it could be in the 60s. So that contrast is going to be historic by itself. But notice that this thing spills pretty far towards the south, and look, by Friday, Thursday, these anomalies are literally off the charts, and this goes well into the southeastern United States, well into the Northeast. The GFS, especially if there's a heavy snowfall footprint, is showing really temperatures that you would see maybe every once a few years if it was during January, let alone in December. So a concerning blast of air. It does look like it will spare the worst from the northeast and southeastern Canada, but the gravity of this thing is just incredible. Let me show you some of these 2 meter temperatures shaded, so what the thermometer is actually reading. Obviously further up north, just incredible cold, 30, negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit and Celsius. And then notice across Texas, right? So cities like Dallas, you may not get a white Christmas, but you still will be shivering. 11 degrees Fahrenheit there, 20 degrees the next day after that. So it does start moderating as you get further into, say, Christmas Day, especially across areas like the southeast and where the colder starts first. But look at those temperatures potentially across Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio. Really, really excruciating cold. The northeast, again, gets spared. You still won't be warm, though. It will be a very cold Christmas. Good news is for New Year's and those celebrations, it actually may be astoundingly a lot warmer. I mean, some areas like, look, central Illinois go from 50 on December 29th to from initially seeing negative 19. So that's quite a temperature difference there. Again, will it get this cold? It's tough to tell. I mean, really, a lot of models support that. European is the most kind of non-showing, you know, negative 20. Regardless, it doesn't have to be negative 20 to prove the point that this is some very cold air. Even negative 10 across my area at this time of the year is cold. So that is that. Notice the southeast gets in on that as well. So that is that. Very big snowstorm, very heavy snow potentially for some areas, producing a historic, if not legendary, blizzard. And overall cold air behind it. Good news is it will be rather limited. And in fact, if you look at a model like the GFS with its total precipitation graph, its most latest model run shows, again, that massive storm as I was talking about it and addressing. But following that, that cold air moves out of here very quickly, and you can see warm air moves in. So maybe more precip giving into the west, you know, California. And then systems and storms that are more supportive of rain and snow maybe further north, not across the south here. Will that happen? We don't know. Models like the European and its family don't really support that type of scenario. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you all on the next episode. See ya. Bye.